Good afternoon, my friends. Welcome back. This is going to be the second batch of cards for the Master Mirror expansion reveals. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to decide to grade each card now. And I'm also going to give some notes to things to look out for on this card. Now, I'm pretty nervous about the grading because it is just me, and if I miss something, then my grading is going to be off. But I think what I'll do is, at the end, when all the cards are revealed, I'll go over all the cards again to see if my opinion changes based upon any other cards that are revealed. So the grading will be solely based on its applicability with what we've seen so far. Okay, great. So let's begin. So the first card that we see today is Will o' the Wisp. This is a neutral 5 provision card. It's a spell with no tag seemingly, and it destroys a doomed unit. Now, this one, I do have some quarrels about it. As far as we are aware so far, in the meta, there's no real cards which are automatically doomed themselves, and that this would just be a good tech card to counter. As a tech card, I don't think it's very good. There are some demons coming out which are automatically doomed, like the Ethereal, but this still won't be very good against them because as soon as they place the Ethereal, there'll be 2 of them. And really, we gotta compare this to 2 things. First of all is poison. How good will be applying doom and destroying a doomed unit be to poison? And what is the value that dooming a card will have in the game? Okay, so poison is better than this. Okay, poison is any 2 poisons in the game will do the job of killing a unit. And to be honest, most poison users don't really care if something comes back because they're just doing it for massive value. For mulligan purposes, poison is pretty easy. For this, you will need to apply doom and then use a card that destroys doom. So for mulligan purposes, it's a little bit harder to get across. If you have 2 applies of doom, it does nothing, and if you have 2 ones that destroy doom but no application of it, then it also does nothing. So it's potential to be a dead card, pretty much. So for that reason, it's harder. Now, the actual benefit of doom is that they can't replay a card. Now, from the cards we see in the game so far, this only does a unit. It doesn't do artifacts, so you can't like doom a masquerade ball. So really, there's only a handful of cards that this would actually be very useful against. Crow Mother, which you don't really need to destroy. Wild Boar of the Sea, which you don't really need to destroy because it's not massive value. Morkvarg, Heart of Terror, which again, not massive value. Yughern will probably be the one that would give you massive value in a turn, but it's 2 card play in order to get that value. So I think the dooming and then the destroying of a doomed unit is probably not worth it. This is why this card is going down on my sort of grade scale a little bit. Because if you doom a unit, great, that's what the doom is supposed to do. That's the doom thing done. It means they can't replay it, Crow Mother gets no more extra value, they can't second wind it, they can't consume it with Oswald, that type of thing. They could purify it, and then you might have to apply doom again. But if you apply doom to something and they purify, then you can't destroy the doomed unit. And everyone's running a purify. Everyone's running a purify. So I just think that for the most part, apart from maybe Yughern, I can't think of any others that would actually need to be destroyed in that particular round. And between you applying the doom and then just using this card to destroy the doomed unit, they could still purify it anyway. So for this reason, I'm going to start this video off with a 1 out of 5 stars. Pretty harsh. It just feels like there's no reason to destroy a doomed unit apart from maybe Yughern until we start seeing more cards, which maybe that becomes a little bit easier. In the current state of the game with the cards that we've seen revealed, no one's really going to run Will o' the Wisp because it's got potential to be a completely bricked card, and there's not enough inherently doomed units to make it reasonably good. So for now, it's a 1 out of 5. We'll wait to see if more doomed and demon and inherently doomed cards come out that this could be useful for. So we've got Offering as our next card. This is a neutral special card, 6 provisions, and damage a unit by 1, and on death blow, play a bronze unit from your graveyard and give it doomed. So in comparison terms, Freya's Blessing is also a 6 strength provisioned special card. This has no extra tags, so it's not affiliated with alchemy, organic, or anything like that. So it has no extra benefit in other factions. Now, I think this card is pretty good. I do like this card. I feel like it can be used in about 3 areas. Some more useful than others. So the first one, the worst one, is Skellige. More resurrects could be useful. I do think possibly this would only be useful with Harold Houndsnout, whereas Wilhelm, Wilmar, and Wilfred skulls. You could ping one of those skulls, get the 2 damage, and also resurrect one of your bronze cards, which could be very useful. Again, it has no tags. I think that's a bit too limited, and you've got Freya's Blessing to sort of do that sort of thing anyway, so I feel like this is not necessary in Skellige, although it's applicable if you want. The second one, which might be a bit more viable, but we've yet to see, is with the spies, agents, and conspiracy sort of themed deck. It is neutral, so if you're going for a devotion deck, it can't work, and it seems like a lot of these new cards which are coming out for the spies archetype are actually devotion. However, for now, if you want to play like Duchess Informant, or Emissary, or Cantarella, damaging, getting the value off those spying cards and conspiracy based on those, and then damaging them by 1 to destroy them later, and resurrecting a bronze card from your graveyard is a nice applicable use of this card. Next up, we've got probably the most viable is Ronvid the Incessant for Northern Realms. So I value Northern Realms bronzes quite highly. They've got some really good ones, good engines that just keep coming up, but they can get removed. And this is a nice way for Northern Realms to actually get them back on the board and reuse those engines a lot. So Ronvid the Incessant is the crux to this. He comes out as a 6, and when he dies, he comes back as a 1 strength unit every time a soldier is played. So when he comes out, you could ping him for 1 with Offering, and then he will die. You would resurrect a bronze unit from your graveyard and give it doomed. Now, most of the bronze units from Northern Realms are soldiers, which will then in turn bring out Ronvid the Incessant again. So it's basically like that 1 strength. Although you're taking the damage, he'll pretty much come out immediately after anyway. Now, because I actually think that's such a good tactic, I think people are going to, you know, tech against that a bit. If it becomes a popular tactic, because I think it works so well, I think people will tech against it. And it's pretty easy to make Ronvid doomed, and then, you know, that whole strategy loses its oomph. So a 4th option would be any sort of monster deck that uses Arrakis drones. You can ping these to get their Offering. More appropriately might be the Fruit of Yggdrasil. You could play a fruit on round 2 or 3, ping it with Offering, and get a nice resurrect of a consuming engine or something. Not only that, the Ancient Foglets have a 1 strength Death Wish, so you get the Death Wish, and you also get to resurrect a nice bronze engine or something, which is pretty cool. So monsters have got some nice applicable things you can do with this as well. I think Offering is a pretty good card, only for those couple of things. I can't think of much else. I mean, if you're fighting against an Arrakis Swarm deck, then you can ping one of their things for free. You could probably get a chance ping on other things as well, but that's not something you want to stick in this deck. Just hope that you get something. So for that reason, I would give it about a 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10. I'm not even sticking to my own my own grading system. I give it about a 3 out of 5. Okay, it's got limited use but decent use in a couple of decks. However, I think with the amount of Doom stuff we're seeing in this particular faction, if it does become really good with Ronvid or something like that, then we'll see Ronvid become doomed very quickly. And he's not exactly difficult to take down either. So, there you go. So next up is the Nilfgaardian Bronze Seditious Aristocrats. 3 strength for 5 provisions. It's got the Aristocrat tag, so it's got some synergy with Masquerade Ball and the likes, so that's pretty cool. And on deploy and devotion, boost South by 1 for every spying enemy unit. Now I believe the devotion is just tied to that deploy, and this next bit doesn't matter. Whenever an enemy unit gains spying, boost South by 1. Now, I think that's a really well designed card. Basically, you can get full value whether you're devotion or not. However, if you have devotion, it's safer. And I just think that's amazing, you know? So, basically, if it's non-devotion, you have to play it down straight away. And then it's vulnerable because it's only 3 strength. And, you know, try and boost it from there. But if it is devotion, you can make it safer by playing a couple of spying cards, plonking it down so it's instantly 6 or 7. Or even, if you think they are going to lock it, you can play all your spying cards if they're not getting rid of them, and then just plonk it down at the end for a big boost of points, like an end card nearly. So really, really cool design. I really like it. and I think it's 100% staple in the spy, maybe conspiracy agent type of deck that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of cards coming into that, and a lot of them are devotion, including the evolving card of the Usurper that we saw, which we'll see later. But really 100% staple, really like the design. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars for that one. So next up, we're looking at the Ethereal. This is a neutral gold, 4 strength, 8 provisions, demon that has no synergy yet, but may in the future. It's doomed inherently, so if this becomes a bigger problem, you could see some tech against it. I don't think it's going to work because of the way its ability works. At the end of your turn, transform a non-demon unit to the right into the base copy of self. So effectively, as soon as they play it down, providing they've got a 1 strength unit next to it, it's a 7 for 8, and you get 2 copies of these. Now these 2 copies are both going to be trying to transform the unit on the right at the end of the next turn. So like, even if you can destroy 1 doomed unit, you'll still have one on the board that can transform another one. If you try and lock it, it should have a chance to get another one. So it feels like this is going to be very difficult to just stop. It's going to happen once they start placing it down. It's going to keep reeling it across, which is kind of cool. I don't see too many applications for it off the top of my head. I mean, you could do Arrakis drones and then change those. The most obvious, easiest one that is perpetually common would probably be Fruits of Ysgith. You can place a fruit down and then transform it, and the next turn place a fruit down, it'll transform it. And you know, you kind of get infinite transforms with this. It is doomed, so you can't reuse it unless you undoom it, which would probably be a 0 strength play at that point. But I kind of like the idea, and I think it's going to be pretty difficult to stop because you can't like lock 2 things. Now this is where orcs would be very useful. Orcs would come in handy to stop this if it became pretty big. So any Nilfgaard people, I think orcs, not masterfully common, but common enough that, you know, could stuff this strategy. How good is this strategy? Well, I mean, with Fruits of Ysgith, it generates like +3 value a turn, so that's not bad. It's kind of like a Queen's Guard in that respect, an automatic Queen's Guard. I'm scared that movement might be able to counter it pretty crazily, because movement always puts it on the right. So they could move, let's say for example, a Yughern on the back row. They could move it up to the melee row, and then you wouldn't be able to really squeeze anything in there. At least not a Fruit of Ysgith, because that is created automatically at the end of the row. You could place a card in there, like you could place a 4 strength, I don't know, Rot Fiend in there, but you're going to be constantly putting units in there and inefficiently changing it. So it's very dangerous to movement as well. So, but I think it's kind of cool. Design-wise, cool. Thematicness, very nice as well. It comes from Old Geared Nightmares from the Heart of Stone DLC. Really, really cool. So I'm going to give this card a 3 out of 5. But I'm also going to slap down a Lord Vran Seal of Approval. This is definitely a card I want to play with because it's such an interesting card. I think it's only going to be able to be played in a couple of select decks, but in there it's going to be a lot of fun. It's not going to break the meta, it's not an auto-include, but it's definitely an interesting card that I want to explore, and that's what the Seal of Approval is all about. So the next card we've got is the All God, a neutral card, 4 strength, 11 provisions, and deploy. Boost 3 units in your deck by 2. So it's a 10 strength in total for 11 provisions. 6 of those points are carryover, which is kind of nice. Now it's difficult to warrant the 10 value for 11. You may not accidentally get all of the 10 value because you may never draw a card that you boosted. But I mean, most likely, most practical senses, if you want to use this card, you'll guarantee that value. So you'll put it on things like Knickers, Roach, maybe Alarian that comes out with 5 elves, or the Nilfgaard soldier that when he's put on the top of the deck it comes out automatically, or something that you can get with Royal Decree. I don't think he's going to see that much use. I just think he's a lot of provisions, and what does he actually do? Nothing that's going to be that interesting. I fail to see the inherent value. Now if you do put it on Roach, you get 9 value straight away, which is pretty good, because Roach will come out immediately. I just don't think many people are going to take it. Most of the Roach Knickers kind of decks are basically Lippy Goodman, where you can use it multiple times. No one else really takes that, and I think using him to push that sort of goal is not even worth it. So I'm going to have to give him like a 2 out of 10. I don't think he's going to be that useful at all. He's not garbage by any means, but I do think that it's difficult to warrant putting him in a deck. Because like, it's such a slow tempo play unless you start using Roach and stuff, and Roach isn't used too much either. So yeah, all God, no relics combos. So the final card for this particular batch is the Usurper, the Nilfgaard specific evolving card. So first of all, he's the Usurper Officer in round 1, round 2 the Usurper General, round 3 the Usurper Emperor. Okay, all 3 variations have Soldier synergy, which is really nice. None of them have Aristocrat synergy according to the card reveal website, which I take to be the most up to date. So they're 6 strength for 11 provisions, which is good. And the Usurper Officer, spawn an operative on the enemy row, which is a 3 strength spying unit, has Zeal and Order, seize all operatives, and at the start of the round, while in hand and deck only, transform into the next version. So the Usurper Officer is worth 9 points in round 1. Okay. Now, if we get to the Usurper General, this spawns 2 operatives, 1 on each row, and still has the ability to seize all operatives, but has Devotion at the start of the 3rd round, while in hand and deck transform. So the Usurper General is worth 12 points if played in round 2. Now the Usurper Emperor, the final variation, still spawns 2 operatives and still can seize them all, but it has Veil to protect itself a little bit, and has the added extra ability whenever you play an agent, boost self by 1. So this is worth 12 points when you play him, and then a decent more, okay, because there's quite a lot of agents. There's some neutral ones, but you won't be able to get to the Usurper Emperor with neutral agents because it requires Devotion. So the spying cards, not all spying units are agents. You've got Emissaries, you've got Duchess Informants, you've got Cantarella, and then there's a lot of non-spying units, normal unit cards, which are agents as well. So there's quite a few agents, and you'll probably get like an extra 6 points with him, possibly. So he could be worth, instead of 12, possibly about 18-ish. Okay, give or take. So a decent, very powerful card for 11 points there. So I do believe this card has the flexibility currently with what we've seen so far to not have to be in a Devotion deck. The value from the Usurper General to the Usurper Emperor is just going to be like an extra 5 or 6 points, I reckon. And the synergy is still there with the Usurper General 2nd stage. So I feel like it's good that we don't actually need to have Devotion. Now, the idea is that you'll want to put it in a Devotion deck first of all, and then get loads of value in round 3. I do think you're going to have trouble playing this multiple times. I think playing it in round 1, there's only a couple of things you can do if you want to play it in round 1 and then play it in round 3. And that would be let it go to the graveyard and then Asira it in round 2 and it transforms ready for round 3, but it'll only go to the second form at max. The exceptions to that would be if you play it in round 1, it dies, and then you Asira it straight away and then somehow get it out later. Or if you play it in round 1 and then strategic withdrawal it back into your hand. But I don't really think that's worth it for the legitimately 3 points plus synergy play that it will provide. So that's not really that useful. So you want to wait until you get to round 3 and then play it for a big play. So if you go the Devotion route, then it's like a 16-18 point card in round 3. They'll want to get it off the board, but you can't because it's got Veil, so it's problematic as well. You got the plus synergies with like the Seditious, aristocrats, and possibly some other conspiracy stuff or some other spying related synergies, and that's pretty cool. I like that. Now, the question that will come up, and I think this is pretty good because I do think it is possible to play this without a Devotion deck, is the Devotion deck consistent enough to meet a good, solid, to make a solid deck? And how important are the tech cards that you need? Because most of the tech cards come from neutrals. Are you needing a Neuromancy? Are you needing Royal Decree, Matter? Are these things that are necessary? And if so, we can cut back on the devotion of the Seditious aristocrat. It's not a big deal. We could cut back on the devotion of the Usurper Emperor. It's not a big deal. And get that consistency. So I like that it seems to be that you can have your cake and eat it too, and decide what you want, whether you want that consistency or whether you can perhaps get that consistency elsewhere. Maybe change your leader so that you can look at the top 3 cards. Maybe put in some like tutor cards that are specifically from Nilfgaard, like Roderick Dontine. So I like that, and I think if you chose not to go devotion and stuck with the Usurper General, you still get 12 points plus synergies from spying, from, you know, maybe conspiracy and stuff like that. There's also the cool strategies about, do you seize straight away? He can seize all his units, and I think most people will, but there's something to be said about the risk reward of playing down the Usurper, getting those operatives on the enemy row, not seizing them immediately. It's dangerous as all hell, because either the operatives could go or your Usurper could go. And then maybe you can buff them with stuff like the Nilfgaardian Knight if you need to. Or if there's any other kind of really cool thing you can do where you steal some buffs from something for a while. Like maybe put it next to Anna Strenger and then steal some buffs and then seize them back later. It's a massively high risk. I don't see many people do it. I don't imagine I'll see many people do it. But it is a pretty cool extra thing you can go for. So I like the flexibility. So for that reason, I'm going to give the Usurper Nilfgaard Evolving card, I'm going to give it 4 stars. Now I wanted to give it 5. I think we'll reserve the right to give it 5 after we've seen more of his sort of archetype grow and see what other things are available. And when I redo the whole list at the end. I really did want to give him 5, but I don't want to be too quick. I don't think he's not going to define the meta, but he's going to be a very decent card for sure. And I like that he's a powerful card that is establishing like an archetype around him. And I like the fact that he's flexible too, that you don't seem to have to need devotion. And I think you could do quite all right with it if you want that consistency and other powerful neutrals in your deck. So very good. So thank you for watching this card batch reveal. Remember, it's hard to give stars, but I really wanted to do it because it really just helps me kind of gauge it where I'm at as well. But when all the cards are released, we'll have a better understanding, and I'll go back over all the cards and sort of adjust my score if I think, actually, yeah, this card is good. Or whether CD Projekt Red might make changes to certain cards, like the Seditious aristocrats, for example. So thank you for watching, take care, and I will see you again very soon. That sounded like a threat. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that at all.